In this video, I'm going to show you what commuting in the Bay Area is really like, especially if you need to get to San Francisco for work. A lot of people choose a place to live because it looks close to their job on a map, and then they realize they're stuck with an hour-long commute. But the truth is, distance is only part of the equation when it comes to commuting. So if you're moving to the Bay Area and you're wondering what your commute's going to be like, this video is for you. Here's a map of the Bay Area. I have a pin dropped on downtown San Francisco at the Salesforce Tower, and this is showing how long your commute is at 5 p.m. taking public transportation. So one of the interesting things that jumps out right away is you can see it takes less time to get from parts of Oakland to downtown San Francisco than parts of San Francisco to get to downtown San Francisco. So the reason that is how public transit works. At a high level, there are a few main ways people get around the area. BART is the main train system that people use to get from one region to another. It connects East Bay, San Francisco, and parts of the peninsula. And because it has its own tracks, it's usually the fastest option. Muni is specific to San Francisco. It has mostly buses and trains, and it's great for getting from one part of the city to another, but that's it. Caltrain runs up and down the peninsula between San Francisco and Silicon Valley. It's the best option if you're commuting in that area. There's also AC Transit, which has buses that go all over East Bay and a few that stop over in San Francisco. Golden Gate Transit runs commuter buses from across the North Bay down to San Francisco. And then there's the ferry. Less common, but one of the most enjoyable ways if you're close to a stop. And which one you rely on completely changes your commute. If you're leaving from Oakland over here, you're likely taking BART, which is a train that has dedicated tracks. It doesn't have to compete with traffic. It goes under the bay. It pops out in downtown San Francisco. If you're leaving from the outer Richmond, however, you are taking a bus and it competes with traffic. It has stoplights, starts and stops. So it takes a pretty long time to get to downtown. So Muni also has trains. If you live out in the outer Sunset, you're taking the Judah, and it is a train that has to run along with traffic. It does eventually go underground, but it's all the way down here when you are downtown San Francisco. So it takes a lot of time to get from the edge of the neighborhood to the inner part of the neighborhood. And even within San Francisco, there's a lot of variation. If you live out here in the Dogpatch or Potrero Hill, you're taking the T line, which is a train, but it always runs really slow and takes a while to get downtown San Francisco. And then another reason that it can get really backed up is the Warriors and Giants stadium are down in this area. So on game day, a lot of people are all trying to take the T to get to the stadium, so it can take an hour to get from here to here on public transportation. That's something to keep in mind if you're thinking about living out here. Now, the best Muni station is the Forest Hill station. It goes underground early. You go through an underground tunnel downtown San Francisco. And so if you live by the Forest Hill station, you are in luck. That is the best Muni stop in the whole city. Even when I lived in the inner Sunset, I would take the Forest Hill Muni every once in a while and then take the bus down to the inner Sunset. When I first moved to San Francisco, I lived right here, and my roommate, his parents lived out here. Many times he would stay at his parents and we would leave for work around the same time, and he would beat me downtown San Francisco all the way out from Lafayette than me leaving from the inner Sunset. That just goes to show you how much faster BART can be. Yes, there are delays sometimes, but you can cover a lot of ground on BART, whereas Muni chugs away pretty slowly throughout the city. Now, if you are getting a job in Silicon Valley, the situation looks very different. You can see here just how few options of public transportation that you have. This green marker is on the Apple building, and you're pretty much limited to Caltrain stops, which Caltrain runs along these little dots that are showing up here, and it takes a little bit of time to get to wherever your house is to the Caltrain station and vice versa. I have a lot of friends and clients who work in Silicon Valley and they live in San Francisco. They just prefer the quality of life and living down in the peninsula, and they take the tech shuttles that pick up throughout San Francisco. It still takes a long time and they get stuck in traffic, but they say that since there's Wi-Fi on board, they can get work done to and from the office. Less common, but still happens, is living down in the peninsula and commuting to San Francisco. Best option is going to be Caltrain. Again, it's going to take a little while to get to Caltrain, and then from Caltrain to your job. You can put your bike on Caltrain. There's a car that you can put your bike on, so a lot of people will ride their bike to Caltrain, put their bike on, then take their bike from Caltrain to the final stop. That's probably the best way to do it. There is a lot of traffic on these roads, these highways that come through here. So if you are planning on commuting anywhere in the peninsula to and from San Francisco, try to take Caltrain, but if you can't, just be prepared for traffic to take a really long time. Same thing if you're coming to Silicon Valley from East Bay, these bridges all get covered in traffic, so prepare for a long drive. Which brings me to my next point of why driving is not typically the best option in San Francisco. So the reason driving is a bad option is because there's so much traffic and parking is very expensive. Many people try not to drive if they can avoid it. For example, if you're taking public transit from this part of Oakland, Rockridge, to San Francisco, public transit, 25-30 minutes. If you drive, it's probably hour and 15 minutes, could be even longer. There are just a ton of bottlenecks due to the geography of San Francisco. You can see the Golden Gate Bridge up here, and then the Bay Bridge over here, but everyone coming from all the way over here and all the way over here are funneled down to two bridges, so it gets pretty backed up earlier in the day than you might expect. When I went to grad school down here in San Francisco State, I had a professor who lived all the way out here, and he would drive, but he would make sure that his last class got over at 2:30 so that he could make sure that he was on the Bay Bridge no later than 3, because he said that was the last possible time that he could get home without spending hours in traffic. So if your job is flexible and you can avoid peak times, driving can actually be pretty fast. If there's no traffic, you can get from the inner East Bay to downtown San Francisco 10, 20, 25 minutes, no problem, but that is definitely not during rush hour. One of the fastest options is riding a bike. When I lived in the inner Sunset and worked down here in San Francisco, I would ride my bike a lot, and it would take me a little over 30 minutes, but it was a pretty nice bike ride. Going from the west side of the city to the east side, it's basically all flat or downhill. You get to work on a nice little cruise. It's not too challenging of a ride. There's no late trains, there's no traffic, there's no crowded buses. It's just a pleasant ride through a beautiful city to work. So you can ride a bike to work. That's my recommendation. The weather's appropriate for it 95% of the year. Riding home would be a little bit different story. It was slightly uphill, but there are routes you can take. This is called the Wiggle. As you can see how wiggly it is. It avoids the bulk of the hills. I loved riding my bike to and from city. I live in the East Bay now. That's like the number one thing I miss is just hopping on my bike and being able to get downtown San Francisco in 30 minutes or less. An underrated mode of transport is the ferry. There are several ferry stops throughout the bay, and there's 2 in Alameda, there's 1 in Oakland, 1 in Richmond up here, Larkspur, and there's even one all the way up here in Vallejo. I spoke to a woman who lives up here in Vallejo. It takes her an hour and 15 minutes door to door to get to her job in San Francisco because she takes the ferry. That is not much longer than it takes someone who lives out on the western side of the city to get downtown San Francisco. The ferry is very efficient and very fun. There's coffee, snacks, there's even beer, there's Wi-Fi, there's indoor seating, there's outdoor seating, you get awesome views, you're on the water. It's a really enjoyable way to get to and from work. I'll link this map in the description, and you can change where the starting and ending point is and the time of day. If you have any questions, thinking about moving to the Bay Area, my contact information is in the description below. My real estate team and I are based here in the Bay Area. If you have some questions, reach out, we'd love to help. And I just filmed a video about riding my mountain bike from the top of the Oakland Hills, taking the ferry to downtown San Francisco, and I see if I can do it faster than someone who's commuting from the western side of San Francisco. If you want to see that video, hit the subscribe button and turn notifications on. I'll see you next time.